Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating framework of economic and spiritual prosperity. We're going to break down some incredibly profound concepts about what it really means to be successful. We are constantly bombarded by this hustle culture that pushes a get-rich-quick mentality, often at the expense of basically everything else in our lives. Well, this explainer is going to give you a powerful, alternative lens to look through. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a professional, or just someone curious about how deep, lasting wealth and life purpose actually intersect, this framework is absolutely crucial for navigating our modern world. Our source material today is Ryuho Okawa's The Laws of Success, and we are specifically zooming in on Chapter 5, The Path to Economic Prosperity. What makes this chapter so compelling is its core thesis. It completely bridges the gap between material wealth and spiritual growth. In a lot of conventional frameworks, business and personal character are treated as two totally separate worlds, right? Like, you go to work to make money and you go home to build your character. But this philosophy argues the exact opposite. It says true economic prosperity is fundamentally, deeply intertwined with how we develop as human beings. The two forces act as one interconnected engine.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the origin and added value, truth and utopia value, the 4 elements turning the economy, the 3 wealths of prosperity, and finally, the 4 conditions of true prosperity. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Origin and added value.
All right, let's start at the absolute foundation. Before we can even begin to talk about scaling a business or accumulating wealth, it all rests on the concept of objective value. Now, this isn't about what you personally believe a product or service is worth. Think about it this way. You might spend 100 hours painting a beautiful picture that you personally believe is utterly priceless. That is subjective value. But if no one in the broader market is actually willing to trade their hard-earned money for that painting, it holds absolutely zero objective economic value. Any lasting prosperity has to begin with a solid, unshakable foundation of real, measurable contribution that society actually recognizes and demands.
So how does this value actually build? Because it isn't static, right? It's kind of like a ladder. At the very bottom, it originates from basic utility and scarcity. Think of raw materials, like a block of wood or metal pulled from the earth. Then you step up through physical processing. You turn that raw wood into a functional, comfortable chair. But here's where it gets really interesting. The absolute peak of standard economic value happens when you weave human wisdom into the process. Why does a luxury designer chair or the latest Apple iPhone command such a massive premium over basic alternatives? It isn't because the raw plastic or metal is suddenly worth thousands of dollars. It's the human intellect, the sleek design, the usability, and the immense trust baked into the brand. Human wisdom literally multiplies objective value exponentially.
Moving right along to Section 2, truth value and utopia value.
Now, this is where the framework takes a massive leap from standard economics and introduces something called truth value. It asks the big question, beyond just making a product look beautiful or function perfectly, does the business actually align with higher universal truths? What does that even look like in the real world? Well, it looks like radical transparency with your customers. It looks like treating your employees with ultimate dignity and respect. It involves ethical sourcing and operating with unwavering integrity. When a company's day-to-day operations actually reflect these kinds of universal truths, it generates truth value. And that creates a deep, unshakable trust with society that goes infinitely further than any standard marketing campaign ever could.
And building directly on top of that, we find the absolute peak of value creation, utopia value. This happens when a business goes way beyond just extracting profit from society and actively uses its operations to shape a better, more harmonious world. To picture the gap here, contrast a company that simply sells basic household widgets, which provide standard utility value, with a massive enterprise that, say, pioneers a way to provide clean, free energy. They're solving massive environmental issues while forging unprecedented peace and connection across borders. When your economic activity literally acts as a vehicle to bring society closer to an ideal state, you're generating utopia value. It is business acting as a mechanism for global transformation.
Section 3. 4 elements turning the economy.
Okay. So to actually achieve those incredible higher forms of value, you need a highly functional economic engine. And this engine is made of 4 critical elements: people, goods, money, and information. You need talented people to execute the grand vision. You need goods or services that possess that high objective value we just talked about. You obviously need money to lubricate the operations, pay the bills, and scale up. But you might be wondering, why is information elevated to the exact same level as money and goods here? Because in our digital age, information is the absolute glue that holds the other 3 together. It's the strategic data that tells your people exactly how to optimize your goods to attract the necessary money. If any one of these 4 pillars is missing, the whole engine is going to sputter and fail.
But here's the real kicker. Simply possessing those 4 elements is not enough. The core mechanic of this entire economic theory is putting them into ultra-high-speed rotation. Think of a stagnant economy like a mythical dragon hoarding gold deep inside a cave. The money is there, the goods might be there, but they're entirely static, disconnected. Nothing is happening. True prosperity, on the other hand, is like a vibrant, bustling startup ecosystem. A single dollar changes hands 10 times in a single day, funding people who use cutting-edge information to build entirely new goods, which in turn generates even more money. The elements are constantly, rapidly interacting. The faster and smoother this cycle spins, the greater the overarching prosperity generated for everyone involved.
Section 4. 3 Wealths. Bringing Prosperity. When this high-speed engine is humming along, it yields a very specific type of prosperity. And spoiler alert, it's not just a giant bank account. True wealth is actually a perfectly balanced pie made of 3 equal slices: financial money, accumulated wisdom, and the human resources or networks you've built. We've all heard the cautionary tale of the lottery winner, right? They suddenly acquire an absolute mountain of financial wealth overnight. But because they completely lack the accumulated wisdom to manage it, and they don't have a trusted human network to protect it, that wealth just evaporates almost instantly. Yes, financial capital is a crucial slice, but intellectual capital and human capital are equally vital. You absolutely need the whole shebang, all 3 slices simultaneously to sustain real success over time.
Finally, Section 5, 4 Conditions of True Prosperity.
This brings us to the ultimate checklist for a life well lived in the economic sphere. First, you must have the objective evaluation of society. Your success cannot be a mirage. Society actually has to recognize and willingly reward your real-world contribution. Second, and this is incredibly crucial, you must experience personal character growth. We all know someone who gained immense financial wealth but kind of lost their soul in the process, right? Well, this framework outright rejects that as true success. Your inner self, your integrity, and your character have to elevate directly alongside your outer wealth. Third, you must hold positive social influence. You have to actively use your hard-earned platform, resources, and voice to guide, mentor, and genuinely uplift others.
And that brings us to the 4th and final condition. It's the ultimate mirror test, living a life entirely without regrets. Imagine if everything ended today. When you pause to look back at exactly how you generated your wealth, the specific objective value you added to the world, the deep wisdom you gained, and the personal character you painstakingly built, is your conscience completely clear? Are you genuinely proud of the holistic legacy you are leaving behind? I'm going to leave you to reflect on how your own economic journey aligns with that profound question. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it sparks some powerful new ideas for your own path to success.